Well, the Republican repetition of gross untruths continues, and I feel compelled to respond and have a handout there. Let's go through them briefly. But with regard to the charge that we're upstairs twisting arms to get Democrats to vote against the override, that's not true. We aren't upstairs. We're downstairs watching the train wrecks occur. And in fact, I'm not asking them to prevent an override. I've said very clearly to all the legislators, I sent this letter today to all the legislators saying, add the MNLARs funding, which is in the omnibus, which therefore is not going to get signed. Add that to the deputy registrars money, which I support, but not by itself. I made that very clear for the last couple of weeks. I made it very clear again here. So first of all, I support the deputy registrars funding. And as I say, I want them to put together a bill that begins to solve this problem. I mean, rather than just continuing to send things that they know are unacceptable so they can score political points, why don't they collaborate with us to solve some problems? And that's what they've just been absolutely unwilling to do for most of this session, and certainly in this last week. There's no collaboration. There's no attempt to work things out together so we can have successes. Similarly, on the school safety, the next letter, I've implored the leaders to send the school safety bill as a separate bill. They've sent me umpteen standalone bills about the most trivial subjects, and here we got something that's vitally important. And they're putting in a bill, again, the omnibus budget bill, because they know I'm not going to sign that. And so they can go around saying, well, Dayton vetoed school safety. It really is appalling. On the tax bill, I've expressed before, even aside from the education part, which they claim is $225 million in funding for the schools, it's just not true. $50 million of it is taken out of the reserve. That's new money. The rest of it is repurposing existing money that the schools have for staff training and for community education, which the teachers and the community education people oppose. So it's not new money. They're just taking money from one pot or two pots and putting it into another one. I just don't understand how they can keep representing these things that are just so patently untrue. It's it's really appalling. The tax bill has its own failings, even aside from the fact the education money is inadequate. It favors wealthy Minnesotans, individuals, over lower income and middle income people according to their tax rate cut. If you're making $20,000 a year, you get a $20 tax reduction. If you're making $250,000 a year, you're going to get 13 times that amount. Similarly, middle-income family making $65,000 a year will get about 1/3 is the amount that a family making $250,000 would receive. By contrast, my proposal provides middle-income, lower-income families with more tax reduction than people at the very top. I've already talked about the $200 million exemption given to companies that are bringing foreign profits back to the United States that even the Republican Congress said that they would tax. And then finally on elder care, another one of these self-proclaimed great advances, the letter here from ARP and other senior citizen advocacy groups, I think speaks very well. They think it's a terrible article. They oppose it. I think it's worse than existing law. So again, I'm astonished that they can come before you and say with straight faces that they are doing all these things that are just not true. And once again, if they could have taken the opportunity for us to work cooperatively together, we could have gotten these things done, put together, and the Minnesotans would be the beneficiaries of that. But that's not the way they're operating. That's not their objective. Their objective is to sign up with every moneyed interest every special interest available to them, the big drug companies, big multinational corporations, the NRA, the nursing home chains, everybody who's got something that they want for next fall. And the people of Minnesota have been left out of the cold as a result, and it's shameful. Glad to respond to questions.
Governor, with respect to the funding for the deputy registrars, Republican House members say that they did not understand, and your staff never communicated to them, that there was a condition for that specific funding that it be tied in with all of Minute. And they said this morning that they felt that in good faith they'd given you what you wanted as a standalone bill. How do you respond?
I mean, Commissioner Clyburn and Dana Anderson, who's been talking with the deputy registrars, we have told the registrars that they're going to the legislators on their own and trying to get their money with not supporting the changes we want to make in MNLARs for the improvements we want to make was the wrong way to do it. They should be helping us advocate to get the system fixed. The deputy registrar financial aid, which again I support, helps out about 200 Minnesotans. Fixing the MNLARs system as it relates to driver's licenses and vehicle transfers helps hundreds of thousands of Minnesotans. So why wouldn't we want to do both? And we've made that clear to them verbally. Legislators have been involved. As I said before, the MNLARs funding, which I asked for starting in January. If we get on top of this thing and start to make the corrections necessary, I think there are legislators, Republican legislators, who don't want MNLARs to look any better until after the election. They want it to look as bad as possible. That's what their unwillingness to provide funding for. They wouldn't provide funding for DPS to answer the phones, for crying out loud. If people say they can put it on hold for half an hour because there are enough people at DPS to answer the calls, and they specifically, a couple weeks ago, wouldn't provide the funding for that purpose. It's just, they want to make it a shambles, they want to leave it a shambles, and then, again, I sympathize with the deputy registrars, but that's only partially solving the problem here. I want to solve the whole problem.
Governor, has anything changed since this morning when you said you were not optimistic about signing any of these major bills that you knew were in the works?
We haven't seen the bonding bill. Haven't seen the pension bill. I hope both of those will come as decent measures.
The tax bill, the supplemental budget, you've seen those.
I've seen nothing that would indicate to me that I would sign either one of them. They're just sending the same one. They said themselves they're sending the same tax bill as before. They got this fake education aid tacked into it, to try to cover themselves. And again, just why a bill that is providing $200 million of tax exemption to multinational corporations to pay taxes on their profits in Minnesota instead of providing school aid. In fact, they could provide the school aid and have, according to my request, $62 million still left to give back to the multinationals. I mean, it's just astonishing to me. You ask Minnesotans, what do you prefer, emergency school aid to avoid teacher layoffs and curriculum cuts, or $200 million for multinational corporations? What do you think the poll would say about that? What do you think Minnesotans would say about that? But they don't have a voice in this. They can't make the campaign contributions that some of these other moneyed interests are going to make, which is what's driving all of this, which is why it's just so vile. I've seen partisan differences before. I've dealt with partisan differences. I've dealt with Republican legislatures. And we've had impasses which were based on primarily very different views of what's best for Minnesota. Even the 2011 impasse were honest differences about what was best for the state. This is different from that. This is different from anything I've experienced before, where it's solely focused on what benefits them for their reelection. Has nothing to do with trying to work cooperatively with me, has nothing to do with the best interests of Minnesota. It's all about themselves, their own reelection, and it is disgusting.
Governor, it sounds like you are not changing your opinion then. You are not going to accept the tax bill, not going to accept the spending bill. the omnibus spending bill. Is that accurate?
That's accurate.
And they said, the Republicans said today that this tax conformity in particular is going to benefit so many people, and if we don't do that in the state, hundreds of thousands will get a tax increase.
Well, they'll have an opportunity in next January to come in and deal with this. Hey, no question, I've said this all along, and Commissioner Bowerly said, you know, we need not complete conformity, but we need some resolution to simplify tax returns for Minnesotans and to provide every Minnesotan, as I propose, and they have mostly for providing that for individuals, a tax cut. But, you know, they've known that all along. They've known what I would accept. Commissioner Bauer has made it very clear what's acceptable, and they loaded it up with things like the tax exemption for multinationals. That's just unacceptable. So they brought this on the heads of Minnesotans themselves. I mean, they've known what I would accept, and if they didn't, we could have sat down and discussed this. I've not had one meeting with the tax chairs. Mr. Bowerly has, but they just went off after I vetoed the first bill and didn't make any overture whatsoever. Just said, we're going to send the same, basically the same bill, a couple of minor corrections that the commissioner pointed out. We're just going to send it to right back to them with a little education, falsehood, and stick it to them again and make them veto it and then blame me for all the problems the Minnesotans will have with a more complicated system. But they've created this. They're the legislature. It's their job to pass legislation that I can sign. And I'll work with them to achieve that, but they haven't made any effort whatsoever.
Senator Gazelka said this evening that you and your staff went dark sometime this afternoon as they tried to get guidance on how to proceed, how to change the bills. Your response? This
is untrue. This is absolutely untrue. My staff has been here till 1:32 in the morning the last two nights. Back here this morning at about 9. I've been here since a couple of TV appearances this morning, and I've been here since then, except I went off to play with my grandkids for a couple hours, and I'm back here now. We've been around. We're available. Commissioner France could talk in detail about, they said, well, get together with Senator Rosen and Representative Nava, and we'll talk through these on the budget bill, all these policy matters that you still object to. And we haven't, he could elaborate. Finally got communication from Representative Nava. They can't agree between themselves. That's a big part of what's gumming all this up. The Republicans in the House and the Senate don't agree with one another, so they can't get anything sit down with us when they don't have a common position.
Governor, on a bonding bill, if they send you a bonding bill, 825 GO plus some additional to bring up to $1.5 billion, what would be your stance on that, sir?
Well, to bring up to $1.5 billion, that'd be terrific. I mean, if they're going to empty out LCCMR for higher cost bonds, I mean, I guess to look at the projects that would get funded. 825 is so ridiculously low that there are a lot of really good projects, including water and environmental protection projects, that are otherwise going to be squeezed out. So, I have to look at the particulars.
Wasn't a half loaf better than no loaf? I mean, are the voters are they going to be able to tell that to their voters that we didn't give you anything because they didn't want to give you enough?
Because they didn't want to give me what Minnesota needs. Minnesota doesn't need a tax bill that's going to give $20 a year. People making $20,000 and 13 times that. People making $250,000. Minnesotans don't need a tax bill. It gives $200 million tax-free to multinationals, and then turn around and say there's not enough money to help our schools. There are going to be draconian cuts in those school districts next fall. Teacher layoffs, curriculum cutbacks. I mean, that's the real stuff. That's the stuff that they should be focused on, and not other matters.
Governor, when you sent the list of 116 items to 117, did you expect all 116 to be accepted by them, or did you expect to win more than you lost, or what was the expectation?
Well, we were pointing out that, I mean, this is a budget bill. We've not had 1 minute of conversation with the leaders about the budget, part of the budget bill. They have policy committees. There's one policy bill on agriculture, which has its own problems, but at least it's a policy bill. And here, you know, they dump all of this stuff. I mean, not just one or two. I've seen, you know, so-called garbage bills for 40 years. And, you know, they have a little bit of policy laced in there, but it's about the budget. This is all about the 116 items. And, you know, we point out what they should have frankly taken all of them out and make it a budget bill. But we gave them the list, and then they came back and they decided which ones they wanted to keep and which ones they wanted to discard. And then that was supposed to be a compromise. A compromise when you negotiate that middle ground. It's not when a person tosses at you in your lap and says, this is a middle ground, take it.
Well, had they accepted all 116, it sounds to me you still would have problems with that bill.
Well, that's a hypothetical. It's hard for me to even imagine that they would do that. I mean, the opioid provision is a sellout to the drug companies. There's not a single dollar required of the drug companies, either penny a pill or a tax, which Senator Rosen was, not a tax, I'm sorry, a fee. Senator Rosen was urging, and members of the House Republican caucus were urging, but the leadership in the House Republican hierarchy said, no, we'll take it out of general fund. We'll make Minnesota taxpayers pay for our opioid prevention initiatives rather than ask the drug companies to be part with their 32 lobbyists here and whatever else they promised, they carried the day. So that provision is seriously weakened and is bad use of taxpayer money when you should be coming from the drug companies. But, you know, the elder care bill article, I mean, these groups speak for themselves. They say it'd be better, it's worse than existing law. They know better than I, certainly. The school safety is in there, a very compelling reason to want to sign a bill, which is exactly why I urged them yesterday and implored them 2 or 3 times in the few meetings we've had to send it to me as a standalone. Why wouldn't they send it as a standalone? If they want to pass it and provide emergency, that kind of emergency safety funding to schools, why wouldn't they send it to me as a standalone bill so I could sign it? So the money could be going to schools tomorrow.
So are you planning to veto those 2 bills? You're saying there's nothing to indicate that you can sign them. Are you planning to veto them? And if so, what's to show for the last 4 months that everyone's been around?
Well, it's been a debacle, but it's the debacle of their creation. Go back to answer your question about the 116. I mean, if all those went out, as I say, there are compelling reasons in there to want to sign a bill, but I'd have to look at it and see what remains. I also had said that I don't want, wouldn't stand for any money being taken away from agencies to fund other projects, and that's also occurred there. But frankly, I haven't, you know, gotten close enough to look at a bill free of all that policy to really think much about it.
Sorry.
But, you know, again, what's happened at the end here? I mean, look at what's happened at the end here. Look at the stuff that's going around. They talk about Minot providing a budget proposal on emergency school aid. It was 3 weeks ago, and they said, well, they couldn't have time for hearings. Well, they look at all the stuff that they've thrown into these bills that haven't had any hearings, haven't seen the light of day, haven't been considered by anybody, committees, the general public, anything. I mean, I've never seen a session this badly mismanaged. I've never seen a session this less transparent. I've never seen a session more beholden to the special interests.
To follow up on or clarify what Brian was asking.
One last one.
Well, when you said you will not accept the tax bill and the budget bill, is that the same as saying you're going to veto them?
Yes, if they come to me the way they are now, I'll veto them.
Okay.
Okay? Oh, that's enough. Thanks.
Thank you.